Tata Tea Gold, power of 49, powered by Tata.
A loving mother, a supportive sister, a daughter that brings joy from her first step. Yet when it comes to her health, girls and women fall way behind men in all indicators. From the moment she is born to that moment she becomes a mother. The result, every 10 minutes, one woman dies in India because of pregnancy and childbirth. But women need to battle not just health but hygiene issues. 600 million Indians have no access to a proper toilet. For girls, that means 23%. 1 in 4 just drop out of school at puberty.
If you roam around in the villages of India, you will find women using sand, ash, jute gunny bags, newspapers, rags, pual.
It is initiatives like Goonj that are breaking the sorority of silence, providing sanitary pads to women across villages and towns.
रोटी ना मिले तो सही है, एक घड़ी, लेकिन ये कपड़ा बहुत जरूरी.
But the questions remain. Why can't the government replicate the work of NGOs in providing healthcare and basic menstrual hygiene for women? How long before every Indian has access to a basic toilet and women can use clean public toilets without fear? And what will it take to put a woman's health, from malnourishment and maternal mortality, from cancer screening and HIV treatment, onto the political agenda? Hello and welcome to the Power of 49, this Jaago initiative for women in association with Network 18 ahead of elections 2014. What we're trying to do here is to get women's issues onto the political agenda. Why does a woman's health come a distant second to the health of the males in her family? Tonight we're taking up the challenges of health and sanitation that are taboo subjects most people will not even touch or talk about. We're privileged to have in our studios Ranjana Kumari. She is the director of the Center for Social Research and a member of the National Mission for Empowerment of Women. Her center has in fact brought out the first Indian Gender Manifesto, part of what we're trying to do over here as well. Anjali Nair, thanks so much for joining us. Global Health Strategies is the forum that Anjali represents. She looks after emerging economies in particular. Also in our studio, Anshu Gupta. He's a first in many respects. He's the founder of Goonj, an organization that works on transforming what he calls urban wastage to rural resource. We'll tell you more about what he does, the clothing and its many uses, particularly for women, ahead on the show. We will also be joined from Mumbai by actress Vidya Balan, who is now the brand ambassador for sanitation in the country, what she calls the real dirty picture of India. Now, the Power of 49 over the past few weeks has been asking women to log on to jagore.com and to raise their issues there. And it is the issues that you have brought up that will now be discussed on the show with all our panelists. Let's get straight to the subject of health to begin with, and then we'll come to sanitation and to our action points. You've seen the extent of the problem there, and here are some of the action points we put together that we want to discuss on the show tonight. Free incentivized safe deliveries in hospitals for every mother, including postnatal maternal care. It's not just about early motherhood, but in fact those maternal mortality figures that refuse to come down to the levels that India aspires for them. Incentives particularly for the care of the girl child. You saw the problems of anemia, other problems particularly for the girl child by the time she's 18. So we need more schemes that promise medical insurance for girls of that age. The construction of women's wards and hospitals for cervical cancer, for breast cancer, for HIV/AIDS, and specialized medical insurance packages for women. Let's just talk about the health issue to start with. Anshu Gupta, I want to start by asking you, and I say this because so many have written in to us on Twitter, on Facebook, and they're basically saying, why are you speaking about these issues just for women? After all, health concerns everyone. Sanitation, of course, also concerns everyone. But why do we always speak about women's issues particularly?
You know, I always tell people one thing, that if you talk about like sanitary napkin issue where we are working, people often call it women issue. And I always question that, why do you call it a women issue? I mean, how come it is not a human issue? Because the moment an infection happens, the moment anything happens, and you are told that you have to remove your uterus. Now, where is the humanity in that? Ultimately, the women takes charge of life. The women takes charge of the children. The women takes charge of life, especially in India, if you see the entire scenario. I mean, people like us, the male, We might act very responsible and all that, but we also know, especially in the village context, that what kind of responsibility ultimately we own up.
Ranjana Kumari, we're just looking at that entire cycle, from female feticide to the health issues of a newborn to the health issues of an 18-year-old girl. It's a crushing cycle, really, because that young girl who becomes a young mother then goes on to have anemic children, and it continues. And yet, access to health care is a part of society's attitudes, one would say. How does one get that onto the political agenda?
Well, certainly, when we were creating Gender Manifesto, one thing which we found not been promised ever by any political party in their manifesto is how they will reach out to women and how they will look after women's health. This is one of the most ignored areas. So I think in that sense, the first and the foremost agenda, if at all we want a healthy nation, we have to ensure that our women are healthy. And that is what has to go through the political parties to the people. And then once they make that promise, certainly they should come back and deliver that promise.
Anjali, you want to get in on this? Is there a particular thing we can do to help with this malnourishment, particularly for the girl child?
Absolutely. I mean, one straight action point is that the government is talking about iron folic supplementation, and they're talking about giving it weekly to young girls in school. And there is a school health program which clearly lays out the guidelines. Now, states have been doing it in an ad hoc manner. Some states do it, others don't. I think if the government starts enforcing it and make sure that every state in every school regularly provides that iron folic supplementation, I think we will go a long way in addressing the issue of anemia. But just one more point I do want to make is that, you know, at the center today, it's the best time. We've got some of the most brightest and most dynamic officials in the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. But health is a state subject. So when we talk of political leadership, we can't just limit it to the center. We have to recognize the reality, and we have to address the chief ministers, particularly of those states that do very little. The problem here is also cultural and social, as Ranjana will agree with me. I mean, women have always been looked at procreators. So it's either you look at sterilization programs where after they've had 2 children you want to control their fertility, or you want to look at just the child health and make sure the child is born. And I think at some point of time, if we focus on institutional deliveries and focus of quality of care in that institutional deliveries, where a woman becomes important and is the satisfied customer, I think we will address
So eventually
that.
it comes down.
Absolutely.
I do want to get to the issue of sanitation now, and the importance really of every Indian, but particularly every Indian woman, to have that access to a toilet that is both clean and safe. Let's start by telling you this remarkable story of a young woman called Savita. Setting a mirror to India's shame of sanitation. As a young bride, Savita made a strange choice and sparked a revolution. When she walked out on her marriage because her husband's family wouldn't build a toilet in their home.
मैदान में जाना पड़ता था और वहाँ से लेट भी हो जाना पड़ता था, यहाँ से दूर दूर जाना पड़ता था.
But husband Dev Karan didn't give up and worked to earn enough so as to fulfill Savita's unusual demand.
हमको मजदूरी भी करनी पड़ी, मेहनत भी करी हमने और आमा सामा करया और बनाई.
Savita's push for sanitation has now made her a star. The Madhya Pradesh state government has also sanctioned 66 new toilets in her district of Muldana. How long before 600 million Indians without access to a toilet can realize Savita's dreams in their homes too? But Savita's story is only one woman. There need to be many more of them. Let's bring on one of the most famous faces now on the issue. Vidya Balan is, of course, a famous actress, but is also the brand ambassador for sanitation. She joins us now from Mumbai. Thanks so much for coming on The Power of 49, Vidya Balan. And I have to start by asking you why you chose to take up the cause of sanitation. Toilets, going to the bathroom, really not an issue celebrities normally talk about.
As a woman, it's extremely uncomfortable and cumbersome when you don't have easy access to a toilet. And I'm talking about those one-off situations when you're shooting in a far-flung location. You know, maybe atop a hill, and you have to walk down to use the washroom every single time, and it's extremely frustrating. And that I've always wondered how women who don't have access to toilets on a regular basis survive. And then the Ministry of Health and Sanitation asked me whether I would be the National Brand Ambassador for Sanitation, and I happily agreed because it's something I feel very strongly about. It can't be an untouchable issue that you don't want to face anymore. There are so many other fallouts of this. I think school dropout rates, maternal mortality, everything can be traced back to lack of sanitation.
What is it that you would like to see political parties in their agenda for elections 2014 really put into their manifestos?
At a time when the entire nation has woken up to women's safety issues, I think sanitation has to find place in election manifestos. And it is clearly not just a rural problem, it is an urban problem which needs to be addressed. And I think women shouldn't just vote, but should vote for candidates who care for their issues. Clearly, if we contribute 49% of the votes, then we deserve better attention. Our issues deserve better attention.
All right. Vidya Balan, thanks so much for joining us from Mumbai. Certainly, Vidya Balan helps to put that face to a campaign that, as we said, nobody really wants to talk about. Let's straight away get to our action points when it comes to sanitation. One of the action points that everyone said is we just need more workers out there. We need what they call the frontline army of people, not just the ASHA program that we already have of accredited social health activists in every village, but we really need to be able to build a complete army that will take this up on a war footing. The second action point that we had was to put a deadline and to put a figure to how much the government and particularly political parties need to commit when it comes to building toilets. And we put that figure at 1 crore, that the mission should be 1 crore toilets with a deadline, with a timeline for those 60 crore people who don't have access to one. Especially, we need those as women's toilets, the provision of public toilet access for women 24/7 with privacy, which means access to water as well. Anshu Gupta, you're a man who speaks about subjects that even many women will not speak publicly about. Do you think those action points are really the way forward?
These are good, but we also need to understand that we are talking about toilet. But what kind of toilet? You know, I mean, because we are again imposing the urban designs and all that. We are not understanding. In many cases, you have seen, say, especially after disasters, the toilets are made, but the women has to go for the water, you know, say a few kilometers to bring it. So that means the toilet is absolutely useless. So we need to understand the local dynamics. We also need to move out of this complex kind of situation where we have male and female toilet complex. It doesn't operate like that.
You have to have separate.
You have to have separate places.
And you think a timeline and a figure is what we need to put into those political manifestos? If we say mission 1 crore toilets, at least we'll get somewhere?
Well, if you want women's vote, you have to do it. That's the message that I think this program also need to convey. That, you know, and also about your target. I think if 1 crore is allocated by central government, and this will be, of course, going to the state and can be matched by the state as a 50-50 partnership, you know, concept, then 50%, that means 1 crore by the state. So by that logic, you have 2 crores. But the whole thing is that village does not have the kind of attitude towards, you know, cleanliness in terms of, and this is also caste-based activity. So we do not want to burden the people who are, you know, so-called people who will be only responsible for cleaning the toilets. Then certainly some kind of a campaign of awareness needs to be along with creation of toilets launch, where it should not become sole responsibility of women to clean the toilets, and secondly some caste who will do it.
All right, it would seem that every societal problem somehow or the other ties into this issue of health and sanitation. As we slip into this short break, let's give you this. Batting for the power of 49 is none other than Sachin Tendulkar. Let's listen to him. You're watching the power of 49. Stay with us.
I sometimes find difficult to accept that you know, there are not enough washrooms on the way. Wherever you're traveling, there should be some facilities where women can use washrooms. You know, men sometimes have easy access, but women, it's about dignity. It's about giving them respect, because if you're traveling for 8-10 hours, you can't expect not to use a washroom. So it's about giving them enough respect and providing them the right facilities. Jaago re, jaago re, jaago re, jaago re, jaago re.
Enjoy talk time offers for everyone. Call 123 to know your offer.
क्या है मैडम? पेपर स्प्रे. कोई तुम्हारे साथ फनी बिहेव करे ना? Straight in the eyes. We all need one nowadays, हाँ? तुम्हें भी अपनी सेफ्टी के लिए कुछ करना चाहिए.
हम काला टीका लगाते हैं.
काला टीका? Like वो बुरी नजर टाइप. Education problem, guys. छोड़ो ना.
Actually, मैडम, educated लोगों को भी लगाना चाहिए काला टीका.
Oh, really? Excuse me.
जागो रे जागो रे जागो रे जागो रे जागो रे.
वोट किसी ऐसे नेता को दो जो हमारी सेफ्टी के लिए कुछ करे. सबके लिए चाहे.
हम औरतें 49% वोटर्स हैं. अपने मुद्दों के लिए वोट करो. 49 के पावर के लिए वोट करो. टाटा टी गोल्ड.
कहाँ से खरीदा सर?
कोलकाता से. ये देखिए बिल.
कोलकाता की वारंटी तो कोलकाता में ही चलेगी ना सर.
दिल्ली हो या कोलकाता, पीएनबी मेटलाइफ आपके साथ हैं देश भर में 7,000 से भी ज्यादा लोकेशंस में. तो हुए ना डबल शो.
Pure heavenly temptation, golden arcs.
परफ्यूम लगा रहे हो या गैस उड़ा रहे हो? पेश है फॉग. नो गैस, नो वेस्टेज. फॉग. फर्क पड़ता है.
मुझे भरोसा है कि मैं कुछ बन के दिखाऊंगा. इस भीड़ में भी अपनी पहचान बनाऊंगा. भरोसा है मुझे अपने आप पर. मेरे भरोसे का साथी देना बैंक.
देना है तो भरोसा है.
Indian women have come a long way. We have an equal right to say, do in things that we want, in issues that we want. So why not in voting?
When women vote, women win. So join the power of 49.
Issue of the week: Women's Health and Sanitation. To raise your issues, log on to jaagore.com.
जो जबरदस्त डिस्काउंट दिलाए पुराना कैसे कहलाए. आ गया बिग बाजार का तो ग्रेट एक्सचेंज. कुछ भी पुराना लाओ, नए पे जबरदस्त डिस्काउंट्स पाओ. 22 फेब से 30 मार्च तक.
यार मेरे दोस्त के क्लेम के लिए उसकी इंश्योरेंस कंपनी ने उसे 3 महीने घुमाया. कहीं हमारे क्लेम के टाइम पे भी?
बिल्कुल नहीं सर.
सोच मत, तेरे हाथ में टी है. गारंटी नहीं. 2 महीने 3 महीने कुछ भी बोल दे.
10.
वेरी गुड.
दिन. सिर्फ 10 दिन में क्लेम कंप्लीट नहीं तो आपको इंटरेस्ट मिलेगा. ये कंपनी की गारंटी.
पागल है क्या?
और आपके सारे डॉक्यूमेंट्स कंप्लीट हो वो मेरी गारंटी.
पॉलिसी देने के बाद हमारा रिश्ता खत्म नहीं, शुरू होता है. और जानकारी के लिए कॉन्टैक्ट मैक्स लाइफ इंश्योरेंस, आपके सच्चे एडवाइजर.
And time has come when women should assert their rights, and they are doing it. They have come a long way, but they still have a long way to go, and more power to them. I genuinely believe that the future belongs to them.
Issue of the week: Women's Health and Sanitation. To raise your issues, log on to jaagore.com.
Jagore.
This is TV18 and you are watching CNN IBN.
Jagore, jagore, jago.
Tata Tea Gold Power of 49, powered by Tata.
Kaushalya Periswamy's world crashed at 19. Widowed, left helpless by a man who died of AIDS, she was afraid to tell anyone she had been infected.
Many women in my own village having in the HIV virus for 1 month and a few days of marriage.
With that bold statement, Kaushalya changed the course of her life and those of millions like her.
My biggest fear is that if people come to know I have HIV, they will not come near me.
Like Vimla, Kaushalya now counsels many women with the virus, helping them access treatment and get legal aid to protect them from families that are only too keen to throw them out of their homes. If the disease doesn't discriminate between men and women, why does society?
Welcome back to the Power of 49 as we try and get to our action points, our Power Pact agenda really for politicians ahead of elections 2014 when it comes to health and sanitation. Anshu Gupta, we're looking at so many different parts of the problem. Kaushalya Periswamy certainly shows that you can find a solution by simply talking to people about what their rights are. But do you think that it is essentially the NGO model that the government and politicians need to commit to?
That's not a bad model, to be honest. I mean, we know that how to operate in much lesser resources, and we also understand the ground realities out there. If we just diligently focus on the existing schemes, existing facilities, half the problem will be solved. I mean, look at the beautiful ASHA network, the most exploited network out here. Or when I say network, the network is not exploited. Actually, the women are exploited out there because they are not paid on time. You know, there is no fixed salary kind of stuff. They have to travel so much. There is no safety in that and all. Imagine if we just revive the ASHA network. You know, I'm saying revive the ASHA network. Make use of it. How many local health problems can be solved?
Ranjana Kumari, what's the critical thing that will make the difference? Is it more doctors? Is it more hospitals? Or is it just more education?
I think it's all of these, and also a better infrastructure, and also accessible infrastructure, because at the moment, even when ASHA workers are pushing for institutionalized deliveries, when the women end up there are 6, 7, 8 deliveries at the same time, and there are only 2 or 3 beds. So I think this is something which we can do. It is doable. Every political party can make that promise, and when they come to power, they should deliver that.
Anjali Nair, how much do incentivized schemes really work?
Well, they work and they don't. You know, to a large extent, when women do recognize that there is an additional benefit for them to adopt a certain behavior, they do it. And then it's also a question of how much of that benefit actually gets to the woman. You know, so I think there are a lot of schemes, there are very good schemes, and there are some fabulous NGO models which can be replicated and scaled up, and I think it's a question of getting down and doing it.
All right, Anshu Gupta, it's a tough call to bring in even the term menstrual hygiene into a political manifesto. What's the one action point there you'd like to see, though?
You know, people need to understand that it's not a women issue, it's a human issue. That's what I'm saying again and again. So the moment you understand that it's a human issue, maybe your thinking process, the entire process will change.
Or when it comes to, for example, setting up factories or setting up access to sanitary pads, is there a specific action point you'd like to see?
You have such huge SHGs here, you have microfinance here, okay? But you are still insisting on supplying the sanitary pads which have plastic in it. Without understanding that how bad it is going to be. I mean, even if you go to the villages, the sanitary napkin disposal mostly happens within half a kilometer, 1 kilometer of your water body.
And that causes more diseases.
Can you imagine? I mean,
so we've discussed not just the issue of health and sanitation, social issues, casteism, and the environment as well.
I just have a very small point about menstrual health. Women's menstrual health is extremely important, and you have to break all that taboo and all those social constraints to talk about these issues. So please put it in these many words, women's menstrual health, in the agenda of the political parties.
So recognize it as a problem. Recognize it as a problem. I think it's very simple. Right now, it is in that particular state that it is a problem right now.
I'm going to have to wrap it up, but the main point is break the taboos, bring the untouchable issues, if you like, to the forefront. Let's just take you through those action points when it comes to health and sanitation that we hope to put into our agenda on the Power of 49. To build a database enlisting government workers, NGOs, local health and sanitation workers along with ASHAs into one combined frontline army. It's a mission for 1 crore toilets with a deadline of 1 year. Separate women's toilets in particular with privacy and access to water 24/7. Free incentivized safe deliveries in hospitals for every mother, including postnatal maternal care. Incentives for care of the girl child, more schemes promising medical insurance for girls up to the age of 18 years, and construction of women's wards in hospitals for cervical cancer, breast cancer, HIV/AIDS and specialized medical insurance packages. We'd like to thank you all for joining us on the Power of 49. Anjali Nair, Ranjana Kumari, Anshu Gupta, thanks so much for joining us. That's it on this edition of the show, this Jaago initiative, joining hands with Network 18. Remember, the discussions will continue and we do want you to be a part of that. Log on to jaagore.com, register and push the pin on the women's issue that affects you where you are. And Bahus from leading television shows have been raising their voices, joining in the Power of 49. We hope you can join the Power of 49 from the team here. Thanks for watching.
Jaago re, jaago re, jaago re, jaago re, jaago re.